Lonnie, you have all these on the show on screen,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Stop sharing. Hit my screen back.
Yeah.
Stop sharing. Screen share.
Turn to the.
Let me
It
count
doesn't
it.
matter.
Oh,
Josh, will you give me the file for both the emergency regions?
Yeah.
okay. We're good to go.
We're good to go. Thank you. Let's call the meeting to order, please. If we can all stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag.
of
United States of
the
America.
United
States of America.
and
To
To the republic, which stands
for which
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and
with
justice for
liberty
all.
and justice for all.
Thank you very much, everybody. So next we will call roll call, please.
Tim Dean.
Here.
Bruce Angell.
Here.
Yvonne Van Ornum.
Here.
Mike Thomas.
Here,
And we know Jan Berg to be absent this evening.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So Chair asks for a motion for approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the
motion to
agenda.
approve.
A second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? No. All right. Thank you. So the next we'll move on to is our discussion items today with our workshop. Looks like we have quite a bit to work on or a lot to look at this evening. So let's move on to item number 1, which will be the review of public hearing documents. This is going to be first public hearing will be on August 28th, 2020. Item number A, which is PLN 672, talking about the Arlington Municipal Code 20.36. And that will be you, Mark, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so I want to just do a recap of all the items that are on our docket and are up for the hearing. But before I do that, I want to kind of go into some detail here with our transportation plan. And so the map that you see on the screen right now is our 20-year transportation improvement plan. And so what I'd kind of like to do is start on some of these projects that are being proposed and some that are already underway. So we've identified these to be built over the next 20-year horizon, planning horizon, but some of these are already being constructed as development occurs. And so I just want to make sure and reiterate that as development does occur, we are looking at the transportation system as a whole and identifying these projects that are warranted for development as it occurs, and to let you know that we are being proactive in our transportation planning and implementation plan. So some of them that I want to point out are if we start at the bottom of the screen here, and if you go up to the blue line, so this is the 169th alignment. So if anybody's been out on Smoky Point Boulevard recently at the intersection of that goes into Lowe's, so that's 169th. There's a new leg of that intersection and a new signal that was built. That will be the west end of the 169th alignment. And so as you see that alignment, that comes through where Affinity is being built, the senior apartments. It will travel eastward behind Walmart and intersect with 43rd Avenue. From 43rd, it will then turn southward and go across 3 parcels on its way over to 51st Avenue, which is identified in the purple there, the north-south purple line. So that is all except for the gap between the Affinity property and Walmart, will all be developer-born projects. So it's paid for by development. That gives us a lateral alternative east-west connector here between 51st and Smoky Point Boulevard. So it'll take pressure off of 172nd, gives you an alternate path in order to move around between Smoky Point and the property towards the east of Arlington here. Eventually, that will continue across the airport property there down to 59th Avenue, where we'll come into that intersection at 59th and 172nd. And it will also serve the property that's being developed as part of one of these rezones that's coming up, the North Point development. Will benefit from this roadway also. So the next project I'd like to identify is 172nd. This has been talked about quite a bit, about the widening between 43rd and 67th Avenue. It is part of the Connecting Washington package through WashDOT and Puget Sound Regional Council. This is a fully funded project. And we just last week received preliminary design features showing the roundabouts, the roadway section, all of that. So it is moving through preliminary design. Depending on what the funding package looks like here as we move forward with WashDOT, we're still hopeful that we can begin construction sometime in the 2023, 2024 period. But we'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. But that is a fully funded project. One other project that has been identified, and we've had discussions about this, and I know this has been a point of consternation with some of the public and residents, is the segment between 67th Avenue and SR9 on 172nd. So that is now on what's called a candidate list with the Department of Transportation. From the candidate list, it then moves on to a project list, which means that it is in the queue for funding, and mitigation can then begin to be captured for that roadway segment from any development that occurs either in unincorporated county or within the Arlington boundaries to be applied to that project. So just to let people know that this is underway, and we've made great progress on that roadway segment. So moving back to the west, we'll go right above 172nd, which is the 173rd alignment right there. So we do have funding in place in order to build the 173rd from Smoky Point Boulevard to the newly built 40th Avenue. So that's where right next to the Cascade Skagit Clinic on 172nd, a lot of people will see that new roadway that's been constructed. So that 173rd alignment will connect there. There is funding for the fully signalized intersection at 172nd at that location. So those projects are underway. And so that will be another alternative means of connectivity besides 172nd. So every time we add a segment in here that runs parallel to 172nd, it just takes that pressure off of 172nd as being the only east-west connector between here and I-5. Moving upwards to the north above 173rd, you'll see the other blue, thick blue line. So that's 180th. That's a proposed connector from Smoky Point Boulevard to connect into Airport Boulevard. And that will supply a very important a point of connection between the traffic is generated off of Airport Boulevard out to Smoky Point. It also serves a purpose with the new fire station being built on the airport itself. This will provide for a very fast connector out to the Smoky Point community from the new fire station that's being constructed there. 173rd moving to the east on, right off of Airport Boulevard. That segment between Airport Boulevard, moving westward, will be built in conjunction with two manufacturing industrial buildings that are be under construction here this summer. A lot of people may see some activity out there now. There's some grading and fill going in on the site. And that's what that's entailing is there's two manufacturing industrial buildings that are going there. Moving over to the east, red dot roundabout on 172nd. So that's the 63rd Avenue alignment. And this will cut right through the manufacturing industrial area. That runs parallel to 59th Avenue. And portions of that are either constructed or being constructed at the moment. And so eventually that will give you a connector between 188th to the north and to a proposed roundabout on 172nd, so that will be a fully accessed intersection there instead of it just being right in, right out. But that serves a bulk of where our manufacturing industrial development is occurring right now. So without being exhaustive here, I would say anyone that is interested in this should go on to the city's website, go to Public Works, look at the transportation element under Public Works, and look the map and the project list up on that website. And that'll identify everything. You can look at that map, look at what the proposals are, and a description of all the projects that are depicted on this map. So I just want to reinforce and reiterate here that this, we are being very proactive in how we're approaching transportation issues as development does occur within the city. So any questions with that? There being none,
Nope.
I will go down through and just kind of recap the hearings coming up. So August 18th will be our first hearing. Items to be heard that evening are planning number 672, and this will be a revision of Arlington Municipal Code 20.36. These are proposed zoning changes. And so I'll go through the brief description about that. These zoning changes, currently we have two zones that primarily what we use in the city for residential. One being residential moderate density, which is 5 and less dwelling unit per acre. The second zoning that's utilized in the city for residents or residential development is an RHD, a residential high density rezone or zoning. It doesn't give us much choice in our zoning. So when these rezones come up and are being presented to the city, the only option that anybody has in order to get anything higher than a 5 dwelling unit per acre density is through an RHD rezone. And so what that causes is that you go from a very small zoning district to a high intensity zoning district that can abut each other. And that becomes problematic when we're doing that. And so what we're trying to do is create several other zones in order to be able to have a feathering effect so that you can go from that very light density type of zoning and gradually work your way up to an RHD. That way we can provide for a separation between these zones and have that feathering effect through our neighborhoods and really create neighborhoods that are adaptable and are livable, so that you don't have that conflict between the two contrasting zones. I know we've gone through this several times. We went through this in detail early on in the year before our public hearings were put on on hold for the year. So I just want to know, pardon me, if there's any questions about this, these proposed changes from the commissioners.
I have one comment, not a question. In support of this, when there was a joint meeting some time ago between council and commission, the department played a game called Game of Homes. And there were two parts to it. The first part was to have the council and the commission attempt to absorb the population that were required to using existing zoning designations. It was impossible to accomplish. When the new proposed zoning districts were made part of the game, it became a much more logical and consistent process. So what it pointed out was that if we were able to give the department the tools, they're able to produce the livable, walkable neighborhoods that that Arlington needs to in order to absorb the population it has to. That's all.
Thank you, Bruce. On to the next item, which will be planning number 675. This is a revision to Arlington Municipal Code 20.40. This is not a docket item. This is just happens to be, we ran this into our process. One of the rezones actually brought this to light. So this is more of a Scrivener's error that we want to take care of. So within our permissible use code and table, the permissible use table did not allow for offices of attorneys, physicians, professional insurance, stockbrokers, all of those items. But yet in the same permissible use table under a different category, it allowed for all of those uses. And so this change is just to rectify that so it's consistent in the permissible use table. The reason this came up is because the rezone for the airport property between Business Park and the commercial did identify this as a project that we actually have application on that wasn't allowable with this conflict in the permissible use table. So this is just a correction of that permissible use table to allow that use to be within the business park. Any questions there?
Nope.
Nope.
Can we bring up the map? So this is the business park rezone that I was just speaking about. Yeah. So existing is shown with the highway commercial in the pink. This is what the rezone is proposed. So you can see in the blue that that is all business park. There's still a commercial area left along 172nd, but we've increased the business park area simply because that's what the market is showing that needs to occur here, simply because of the interest in the business park lease for businesses. So we've still retained our ability to have commercial and retail out along 172nd, but this will accommodate more leases available within the business park itself. No questions? We'll move on to the August 25th hearing. First item is planning number 663. It's a rezone lot 19 LLC. This was a request from a private party for a rezone of this property. To identify, what's that? Well, yeah, if you would, I just want to make sure Arlington Valley Road is identified. So if you're all aware, the kind of a peach color, that's the Arlington Valley Road, which was constructed 2 years ago. And so this property, they're looking to rezone is alongside the Arlington Valley Road alignment there. This is within an industrial zone. So just for some reference, if you look to the west where that little cul-de-sac is right there, just above the cul-de-sac is Gateway Business Park. So you see the buildings that are being constructed on 67th Avenue now. This is the remainder of the property as it moves eastward over to Arlington Valley Road. So this rezone is actually situated elevation wise. If you look at the RMD area, which is Arlington Terrace to the south of the rezone request, there's about a 60 to 70 foot elevation difference between these two properties. And so all of the RMD sets up higher than the lot 19 parcel. And like I said, it's situated in an industrial area. The property itself is encumbered by quite a few critical areas. There's 2 streams that run through it, wetlands, but there are some buildable areas in there. The proposal of the rezone is to build townhomes in there to be able to fit into the buildable areas of this land. Any questions? None. We'll move on to the rezone corner 9 properties. This is planning number 667. And this is in relation to the Gilman Walk project. So this is the old country term dairy. So the backstory to this property is if you look at the brown area, which is zone residential high density, this was done by the previous property owner, the Grafster family. When this was a request for him, when they annexed into the city of Arlington to have this upper bench zoned as RHD as part of the annexation. He also required a designation of a neighborhood commercial, which is the area identified in the pink, because the store and the farm were still in operation when the annexation occurred, but quickly shut down. So he had to have a neighborhood commercial zoning in order to operate the store at the time. 12 years have gone by since then. There's no viability for any type of a commercial facility on this property. The property is segregates the 2 RHD zones. So all of the property on Gilman Avenue moving to the west is zoned RHD also, as well as the upland of the Grafster property. So it just makes logical sense to have this neighborhood commercial zone extinguished and rezoned into RHD. Being no questions there, we will move on to the first of the emergency rezone requests. This will be the National Food property. We've gone over this several times at the meetings. I just want to reiterate it again that this is a request to rezone from highway commercial to light industrial. This is identified in the sub-area plan for our manufacturing industrial center, also known as currently known as the Cascade Industrial Center. So this was always identified as a manufacturing area. So this really is just fulfilling that need in our sub-area plan. No questions on that?
Just a second. I was looking at something. Oh, no questions.
Okay.
I'm good.
Thank you. The second emergency rezone is the rezone of a split zone on the, I'm going to give this old reference to this. This would be what we referred to years ago as Crown Park. So looking at the map, you see the general commercial zone identified in the pink. Just to the left of that, that gray area right there, that is Crown Distributing's building right there. And so this was split zoned. The developer who has purchased the property would like to clear this up and have it all zoned as light industrial for their use on the property. And so this is just to take out this split zoning and allow it for a light industrial use throughout the whole property. No questions being asked. We'll move
Well,
on to.
I got a question.
Okay.
So I know that we put a lot of thought into this being at this intersection and it being general commercial and that area and the reasons behind it. So now city staff doesn't have any issues with that going away and becoming light industry in that area?
No, that, you know, if you look at what's going on right now, Mike, with
No,
commercial properties.
I know. I just want to bring up the question. That's all.
No, it's a good question, definitely. But, you know, these are really what the market is driving. The way of commercial properties is really a dying breed.
Yeah.
There's just no viability for this much commercial area, especially this one, simply because it falls within a restricted zone because it's in line with the crosswind runway of the airport. So even if we were looking at this general commercial area and we put a mixed use overlay on it, we couldn't allow it because the densities would be too high to be within that restricted zone from the airport protection district. So, you know, it's got a lot of things kind of against it on the checklist here. As a light industrial use, it's a much higher potential. And it really does fit our need to represent the Cascade Industrial Center with maintaining 80% of the areas within the Cascade Industrial Center as manufacturing industrial use and not commercial or residential. To give a good explanation, Mike?
Oh, yeah. I knew what the answer was going to be. I just wanted to ask the question.
Okay.
Well, you know, I mean, otherwise it sounds like you're not paying attention.
Yeah, no, I certainly appreciate it. I hate the dead silence at the other end.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when you know, it's,
No, I know exactly where you're coming from. You know, these things were thought out. It was, you know, what's it been? 20-some years?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it made sense at the time because of the way, you know, the way we saw the world at that time. And, but it's definitely a changing environment for us. So we just have to be responsive to the market.
So now my next question that has nothing to do with this really, are they wanting to do this because that way they don't have to extend, or they can extend the infrastructure as they go through this and not work around this area? Is that helpful to them too? And they're planning on how to build this out?
No, really the impetus of this is the fact that they're working towards doing a stream relocation of Edgecombe Creek.
Yep.
And so they just want to make sure that all the zoning is in place and that they have the ability to start moving forward with that stream relocation. Because there's a ton of stakeholders involved in this. It's Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Fish and Wildlife, Department of Ecology, the Toledo Tribe, and then two jurisdictions because Edgecombe Creek runs down between both Arlington and Marysville. They own the property all the way down in through Marysville, so this is part of the North Point development. So it's 400 acres now, or over 400 acres that they've put under contract. So in order to get that zoning all correct and to move forward and get some assurances moving forward with their project, that's really what it's imperative to do. Moving
Okay,
on.
I'm done. I'm
Okay,
done.
thank you. So the September 1st hearing. So this will be planning number 662, the rezone of 31st Avenue. So this was a private request to rezone. The applicants are multiple parcel owners here. I won't go through all of the names, but this incorporates a 0.93 acre site, a 0.86 acre site, a 0.89 acre site, and a 0.88 acre site. And another one that's a 0.84 acre site. So they're looking for a total of a rezone of 4.4 acres from RMD to RHD. These properties, as you can see, run right against the I-5 corridor and abut I-5, Interstate 5 right away. So when we look at this rezone makes sense to us in the fact that along I-5 is where you really want to have a higher density and a higher building type. It serves several purposes. One is it actually adds some buffering between I-5 for noise, for visual, as we move our way into the existing neighborhood here. And so that's when part of this feathering starts to come into play. So we go from a higher intense use and higher building type to a lower as we move our way from the west to the east out towards Smoky Point Boulevard. Any questions pertaining to the 31st Ave rezone?
I did have one question, Mark, was, and this may not have any bearing on the property or the site itself, but isn't there something in the state of Washington about I-5 and abutting properties that has something to do with something favorable toward higher densities?
So I think what you're referring to, Tim, is that they're looking for higher densities along transportation corridors. And so this really fits both of those. It is close proximity to two interchanges from this location, but it also is along a proposed bus rapid transit route, which is Smoky Point Boulevard. So that's to be in place by 2027 with a new rapid bus line going along here. So yes, the state does require higher densities along transportation corridors. So that does meet this criteria.
And also what I'm looking quite a ways into the future here is that if the type of development that was proposed for Smoky Point Boulevard and the feathering effect that we're looking for is that we were looking for mixed use perhaps on Smoky Point Boulevard, feathering back towards residential and then re-feathering back into higher density. Is that what we're looking at?
Well, as we move westward along the I-5 corridor there, simply because it provides for a nice buffer between I-5 and that neighborhood.
I agree. I mean, even I think especially for sound, if not for sight as well, but.
Right.
But
And we've seen nothing in a way of proposal about what they want to do with these properties. This kind of gets to the point I'm making about having some additional tools for zoning. If you have something that's available besides an RHD rezone, people will take advantage of that and not have a multifamily or a higher elevation, high-rise type apartment complex, it gives them the ability to build something that's mid-range here. You know, even if they were doing smaller apartments or missing middle housing where they could do, you know, triplexes, fourplexes, things like that, garden apartments. It just gives us opportunity to not have this stark contrast between the two zones. You know, you've got RMD just directly to the east there, but you have RHD just above that. So, you know, it's really important for us to have some tools in order to be able to create neighborhoods that are very livable. And without the ability to have those additional zones available to us, it's impossible to do. So if you have somebody that's going through the process of doing a rezone, they're going to take advantage of an RHD zone. It's just a natural progression. But if you have other zones that allow for a smaller capacity zoning, they will take advantage of that too, because not everybody wants to build multifamily housing. They want to do other types of housing. So, you know, if you have enough property, you could be doing things like a unit lot subdivision, putting townhomes in where you have actual ownership there and still get some density out of your property. So it just gives us a wider menu of options here in order to create better neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And the last item on the September 1st public hearing agenda will be a rezone. This will be planning number 665. This is a rezone of a piece of city-owned property known as the York Park property. And so this was property that was actually voted on and surplus by city council. For the proceeds from the sale of that property were to go to purchasing and creating a new community park in the Smoky Point area. And so with these rezones coming forward that are adjacent to this, as you can see where York Park is identified here, there's the parcel that's in the hatching, and there where the cursor is or where the rezone 31st Ave rezones are. So it's kind of dovetailing into that with the request from the city in order to have that as a rezone also.
I guess a question I might have on this one is that on the park that's there now will continue to, it will stay there, right?
That is correct.
And
Yes, so the portion that you're looking at, that parcel, is where the old house and the old barn are at.
Right.
Right. So it's not even developed as park property. Yes, the park will stay viable as a park.
Good. And then, so this is going to be something that would, you know, be built so and that the residents there could actually utilize the park as well. I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. Yes. So I'll give you a little backstory on this property. Is that when it was surplus, we went out and aggressively looked for and had it on the market. We talked to numerous parties about purchasing of this property. We started with single families, we started with duplexes, we started with townhomes. The problem with the property is there aren't any utilities there. So in order to extend utilities to the property to make it viable for any type of residential use, the cost was just so great that everybody walked away from the property. They weren't interested. And so finally we got to the point that we had a party interested in the property. They looked at it and they penciled out what they would need in the way of units in order for this to be a viable piece of property in order to develop. So just to let you know that we did our due diligence in looking at trying to do multiple scenarios with housing on this property, and none of them would pencil out because of the costs that were were to be absorbed by the utility extensions.
Thank you.
So with that, that is all of the items that will be going to public hearing.
That is a
If
lot.
anybody's had a chance, there's instructions on the city website. If you click on the button that's on the homepage, it will take you to the instructions for access into the public hearing for the public. So here we are on the homepage. There's the button. So that gives you a listing of all of the items on the agenda for public hearing. It gives you instructions as to how to access, how to comment at the public hearing itself.
Those are the directions you were talking about.
Yes. Yeah. And so there it brings up the instruction page right here. So anybody that's interested in accessing the meeting, whether you want to testify at the hearing or just to view it, please follow these instructions. Is there like all information on that? Let me go back to the page. Okay.
Everything's on there.
Okay. So that is all I have to talk about tonight. Is there any questions from commission?
Looks like we
No.
much have most of our questions answered. Thank you very much, Mark.
One thing I want to do before we sign off here is that I forgot to mention one project that's kind of important in the transportation plan. So we are actually under contract with a firm who is working on our Smoky Point Corridor plan.
Well,
And so as that moves forward, you'll start to see notifications for public participation. So there'll be online public participation, given that we can't have in-person meetings. But this is to design the Smoky Point Boulevard corridor all the way up to 200th. So we'll be looking at the layout, incorporating in our mixed use along that corridor, and coming up with a viable roadway or transportation project to move forward. So pay attention to that. I'll be sharing this through as we get information. This will be shared with Planning Commission to keep you fully apprised of it. So
thank you, Mark.
yeah, thank you.
So just one more item on our agenda. Were there any public comments or anybody waiting in the wings for us, Lana?
Nope.
Nobody in public comments. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. At this point, then, Chair requests a motion for adjournment.
A motion
Move to
to
adjourn.
second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great workshop, you guys. Look forward to seeing you in the next